So what I'd like to do is start off with a quote from this book. The founder of the NHS, Bevan, officially opened the first NHS hospital, which was Park Hospital in Manchester, on the 5th of July 1948. He met a 13-year-old girl with a liver condition by the name of Sylvia Diggory, who became the very first patient to be treated under the NHS. So Bevan, as you know, he was a coal miner's son who fought hard against bitter opposition to establish the NHS. Told Sylvia Diggory, that it was a milestone in history, the most civilised step any country has ever taken. So one day, there was no such thing as the NHS, and then the next day, it had come into existence. The NHS was created in the wake of World War II, during a time of real austerity and shared suffering in a society based on communal values. This collectivism came naturally to people who had emerged from a devastating war that required patience, stoicism, and personal sacrifice. On the first day of the NHS, some doctors barricaded themselves in their offices, anticipating a stampede. Instead, patients formed an orderly queue. So, much good has happened in the NHS since that time, and we now have a highly skilled and dedicated workforce. And we fast forward 70 years from Sylvia Diggory in 1948, and we're fighting once again for equity in our health service provision. So I would recommend this book. It's called How to Dismantle the NHS in 10 Easy Steps. It's written by a GP in London called Dr. Youssef Helgingi, who very clearly explains the planned, strategic NHS privatisation process over the past 20 years. So this is a process that has been happening for the past 20 years, and we're getting to the end stage now. My name is John Whalley, and thank you very much for inviting me to speak on this very special occasion. I've been given 15 minutes to paint a picture of what is happening on a regional basis. So we've heard it from Gemma and the local basis. I'm doing the regional basis. I think, Sharon, you're doing the national basis, is that right? And I've timed this speech this afternoon, and it lasts for 12 minutes. So another 9 minutes left. I'm the coordinator of Keep Our NHS Public North East, which is a health campaign group who meet in Newcastle. And we've been meeting there for 8 years. And we gave ourselves the name Keep Our NHS Public North East, as we were the only group in existence in the North East at that time, and we wanted to be inclusive to everyone across the region. So again, fast forward 8 years this time, and it's excellent that there are now at least 9 health campaign groups across the North East region, and that's counting brand new Sunderland KONP. So there's 9 groups. Now some of these groups are Keep Our NHS Public groups, and are affiliated to the national organisation, and some of these regional groups have grown up against a very specific local campaign, such as the Save South Tyneside Hospital campaign. And some of these groups centre around social media and awareness raising. So each of these 9 groups has a very different feel about them. And although we've kept the name KONP North East, that doesn't mean we're the coordinators of activity in the region. Each of these local campaign groups is equal and self-governing. And each of these groups across the region, we try and work really hard at respecting and supporting one another. And I'm very pleased that there's absolutely no competition between these 9 groups at all. We all work together with the one aim in mind. And there's definitely a growing and a knitting together and a development of relationships across these 9 health campaign groups. So Sunderland KONP, you're not alone. And on behalf of the other health campaign groups in the region, we all give you a very, very warm welcome. So what I'd like to do now, I think it might help to very briefly, a very, very brief skate through of these different groups. So you get a feel of what's happening across the North East region. Is that okay if I do that? I'll do it very quickly. But, okay, so if we imagine there's a map. I'll start at the top, the north of the region, and we'll go to Rothbury. So we have Save Rothbury Community Hospital campaign, Northumberland. As you know, Rothbury is a small rural Northumberland town, and Katie and the Rothbury campaign group have achieved much in terms of mobilising the community in that town, challenging Northumberland CCG, getting councillors on their side, and ultimately seeing the CCG proposal about the closure of a ward at their community hospital in Rothbury achieve stalemate and it's been sent to the Secretary of State for consideration. So they've worked really hard as a community with that, and that's the state of play. They've done very, very well, and we're waiting to see what the Secretary of State says about that. So on that map, if we're moving down a little bit to North Tyneside, we have Save North Tyneside NHS, and that's a group based in North Shields, and the work of William and his team in North Tyneside has centred around opposing the closure of accident and emergency and the changes to urgent care in the North Tyneside borough. So now we're sort of heading west over here somewhere. We move to Defend Tynedale NHS Services, where Gail, Co-ordinator pressure group, again it's centred around A&E and urgent care at Hexham General Hospital. So we're travelling this way a little bit to there. We've got Newcastle City Centre, and we have the group that I'm connected with, Keep Our NHS Public North East. And our current work is challenging the situation about accountable care organisations and also keeping an eye on what's happening with urgent care in Newcastle. What we're going to do, we're going to cross the Tyne Bridge and we're in Gateshead. We have Gateshead Keep Our NHS Public. So much good work is carried out with this group through social media and attending local council meetings. And Julie and Pauline and Maddie and the other people in the Gateshead group are beginning to re-establish meetings together also, in addition to the social media work. We go along the Tyne, so we're heading east, and we're in South Tyneside now. Obviously created around the downgrading of the hospital and the relocation of clinical services, and Gemma has told you about that. There's a superb team, as you know, in South Tyneside. Okay, where are we? We're over here. We want to head over back this way a little bit and down the A1. And now we're at Durham. Durham Keep Our NHS Public, where Carol leads much work in campaigning and lobbying councillors. And then we hop back on the A1, head a little bit further down south, and we arrive in Darlington. And some of you in the room may know Joe Land, who did much work with the 999 call for the NHS team, and the team that organised the march for the NHS from Jarrow down to London about 3 or 4 years ago. So Joe's moved away from the area to study, but I'm in touch with someone in Darlington, and we're hoping for more developments in the Darlington area. Okay, so there's Darlington. And we head back up north a little bit, along the coast, and we arrive at Age UK in Sunderland, where the wonderful Sunderland and district Keep Our NHS Public has now been founded. And of course there's many individuals across the region who are not part of any of these campaign groups and who are also fighting to save our NHS. So that's a mini skate through of activity, and I hope it gives a sense of what's happening. Please don't get the impression that there's hundreds of people at these meetings, because it doesn't work like that. We've deliberately avoided a regional committee because we didn't want to avoid yet more meetings and bureaucracy. But what we do, we try to keep in touch between the groups by email. And it makes sense that we do keep in touch because, as we know, there's one STP and one accountable care organisation which is going to cover the whole of the region if those go ahead. So it's important that we do work together. But I must emphasise that each group is independent. It has its own programme of activity. If we extend the map a little bit further down to London, your group here in Sunderland is affiliated with National Keep Our NHS Public. And there's about 60 Keep Our NHS Public groups in England. So I would urge a couple of your committee members to join the KNP email list if you've not done so already, because this shares information between all the KONP branches nationally, and that's incredibly useful. We can see what's happening across the country. I would also like to highlight an umbrella group called Health Campaigns Together, and you may have seen these free newspapers. This is another group, it's an umbrella group, and their aim is to pull together all the health campaigns across England. They organised the National March and Rally in London last year. They organised the Vote NHS activity at the election. So in time it'd be great if the Sunderland group, if you're able to affiliate yourself to them as well in time. Okay, so welcome. So to finish with, I'd like to briefly give you a taste of some of the lessons that we've learned in Newcastle, KONP. As I say, every group is different ways of working. There's different numbers of people in the groups, different numbers of people at each of the meetings, different interests and skills. Here's 6 things that we've learned in Newcastle. So it might take a while to evolve, but we think we try to have a reasonably clear action plan following a meeting, so that hopefully people go away with an idea as to what can be done in a very real sense. We didn't want our meetings to become talking shops. We needed to add some action to each of the agenda items. So recently we've been focusing on contact with councillors, and we've been trying to step that up. And we've also been focusing on contact with local MPs. Second thing we've learned is we try to link in with as many groups as possible. Unions, organisations, university students. You've got a world-class university here in Sunderland, thousands of students there, health courses, academics, political groups in Sunderland, CLPs, the local medical committee, health watch. So all of these, if there's a link to these in some way in time, we think that would be a good way forward. In Newcastle, we've got a small steering group so that any tricky decisions can be made in between our meetings. And we've set this up as an email steering group so that we don't have to have a meeting. We've developed a website and a Twitter and a Facebook and an email list, because that's a way of reaching out to hundreds of people. We've experimented between having our meetings ad hoc, and we decide at the time, do we have one now, or in 2 months' time, or 3 months' time, or do we have them at set times? And we've found through our experience it is better to actually have them planned ahead. At the moment we're meeting once every 6 weeks, with social media activity in between. Every group is different. And finally, we've learned that numbers fluctuate over time. We feel that there's probably a core group in Newcastle, but we've got loads of supporters as well. And everyone's contribution is appreciated and greatly valued, because people can only do what they can do at that time, and people have different commitments and demands on the time. So we're grateful, even if people step in and then step out, at least we can keep in touch with them by email. And we remind ourselves that we're not alone, we're part of a bigger picture regionally and nationally. So we met in Newcastle last night. It seems a bit odd, seems a bit weird, but I brought some copies of our agenda just to give people a taste of the sort of things we've discussed. So I'll leave those on the table if people want to have a look at that. And they're on our website. And the other thing I'd like to say is that if you see something on our website, or if we send out a circular, and if it's something that you like as a Sunderland group, just personalise it, put your own logo on the top of it, and send it out yourself. We're not precious about any materials, because we're all working to the same ends. The other thing that we discussed last night, we're having a regional NHS march and rally in March. We need to pin down the actual date. It'll be one of the Saturdays in March this year. And if some people were on the regional event last year, it was a very successful event. So we'll be letting Pam and Laura know about the date of the regional NHS march and rally in Newcastle. So finally, may I give my sincere good wishes to everyone here, to the Sunderland and District Keep Our NHS Public Group. I wish you all the very best in the campaign. And in Sunderland, and indeed throughout England, we do need to keep our NHS public. Thank you very much.